Greetings, everyone, and welcome. I'm Bill Griffeth, a proud CSUN alumnus. Personal note to begin with, I just retired last December from day-to-day anchoring duties at CNBC after 38 short years in the television news business. But I'm very pleased to be here speaking to you as members of the Matador community, the students, faculty, staff, our alumni, and our many volunteers, friends, and supporters. It goes without saying that we live in extraordinary times, and the impact that the COVID pandemic has had on education has been profound, and that extends to CSUN as well. And I'm sure that you have questions about that. And what we're going to do here is try to answer many of those questions, not only about the current situation at CSUN, but the foreseeable future as well. And I'm very pleased to introduce the president of our beloved California State University, Northridge, Dr. Dianne F. Harrison. Madam President, it's always great to see you, even under conditions like this.
Thanks, Bill, and it's very nice to see you. I'm impressed that you're on Zoom. You have upped your technology game. Good for you.
With a little help from a certain millennial in my family, yes. We all need help in that regard sometimes. With these extraordinary times, before we get started, clearly there was no graduation ceremony this year, as it was around the country. And I know you have prided yourself over the years of being able to shake every single graduate's hand, more than 11,000 graduates each year over a period of a few days. But I think it behooves us to point out, and I know you'll agree, that even without a traditional graduation ceremony, that does not minimize or take away from the great achievement of the graduating class of 2020, right?
Absolutely. And we could not do an in-person ceremony because of the safety issues. And so we did have some really magnificent virtual celebrations, and one that the entire university community participated in, and then different colleges and departments that we all participated in. It certainly wasn't the same. And I have made a commitment to the campus that we will have an in-person ceremony when it is safe to do so. And hopefully it will be in the spring, but we'll see. Everything is fluid at this moment. We are basing all of our actions on what our county public health department is telling us would be safe or not. But we're going to do it.
I know it'll happen. Let's be positive about it, shall we? Well, let's talk about the impact that all of this has had on campus. I can tell you I've had a front row seat the last few months. As you know, I have a 28-year-old daughter. She switched careers last year, went back to grad school, and when the campus sent everybody home, she came home and has been living here for the first time in about 5 years. And I got to see firsthand how virtual education works, and it was just fascinating. But CSUN has a campus of almost 40,000 students. Tell us how that process worked when the time came.
Oh, well, first off, this is going to sound a little unusual, but we had some experience in doing a quick pivot. The year before, we had some threats on campus, and so we chose to basically go virtual for finals week. And after that happened, myself and the deans and the provost, we were all encouraging faculty to always have a plan B, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And as it turns out, it wasn't any type of potential threat like in a shooting, but it was a pandemic that no one predicted. But the point was that over a period of just about 1 week, every single one of our classes and courses and faculty who were teaching turned around and went virtual. And that is quite a feat. Universities are not really known as places where things happen quickly. We like to think through everything. We like to study it. We like to assign committees to work on it. And at that point in time, we did none of that because we had no choice. We were under strict orders to stay home, and so we had to pivot. And I have to give so much credit to our faculty, to our students, to the staff. Our IT staff just jumped right in. It was really an enormous effort on everybody's part. Was it perfect? No, not at all, because some of our faculty had no experience working in a virtual modality, and so they needed some support. They needed a lot of support and help. Other faculty were just helping their colleagues out, and we managed to do it. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to our faculty and staff and our students, because our students hung in there too. And my heart goes out to our students for having to live through this historically challenging time, and what effect that has on not just their own family lives and their life as a student, but how they're learning. And they're learning to learn in different ways, which actually, when you think about it, the world of work is going to be changing a lot. So our students are going to be ready, we hope, for that new world.
It already has changed. Even in my industry in television news, many of our producers, even our anchors, have been sent home to work. And we're discovering that it actually can be done. And I think a lot of rethinking of a lot of jobs down the road, and that'll have an impact on various businesses in the industry. I want to talk about the future in a moment, but I think we need to acknowledge something that's been happening recently around the country, those protests in light of the senseless killing of George Floyd and the protests that have occurred around the country. Has that impacted the CSUN campus at all?
Absolutely. Our campus and many of our individual campus community members are really grieving right now over the incidents, over the continued systemic racism that seems to be never ending in this country. And it really has an impact on all of us who feel particularly vulnerable for members of our community who really need the support right now more than ever. We're going to have a community conversation campus-wide in the near future, and just kind of let people reflect. They can moan and mourn and be angry and be frustrated, and that's all cathartic and it's important. But we also need to go beyond that. What can we do as individuals and as a university to be helpful and to be leaders in our community? There was a protest on campus a couple of days ago, and it was quite peaceful. And those who attended said that those who gave remarks were incredibly moved by it. So it really has had an impact on our campus.
Voices do need to be heard, certainly in a constructive way, and that can be very helpful when that happens. The future. A few weeks ago, the CSU system made national headlines, and it was announced that the fall semester would essentially be virtual as well. What does that mean for the CSUN community? What do you foresee?
Okay. We use the term primarily virtual, because in the spring, we were totally virtual after a certain date in March. But for the fall, what we're trying to do is to slowly repopulate the campus. And so we're going to start in the fall by being primarily virtual. But for those courses or classes that absolutely cannot be taught in a virtual format, the faculty and the deans are working on putting forward what those classes would be. It will be a greatly reduced number, but let me give you some examples. Things like physical science labs. It's very difficult to do some of those kinds of lab exercises and research work virtual. You just can't do it. Think also about our engineering students. They have senior capstone projects where they have to construct different pieces or different projects. They have to learn how to use equipment to do that. So some of those courses really are very difficult to be done virtually. The performing arts, We have theater and dance and a ceramic course. How do you do that virtually? Sometimes in those classes, a student has to come to campus to use the kiln, for instance. So our provost and there's an academic task force that's working on ferreting out which are the courses that meet this criteria. It cannot realistically and effectively be done in a virtual way. And those are the courses that we will be repopulating face-to-face on campus this fall. And hopefully, knock on wood, please everyone, by January we can be looking at larger numbers of students coming back to campus. But we're going to pay particular attention to our new students, our new freshmen that are coming in, our new transfer students that are coming in, and we want also to have some face-to-face experiences on campus for those students. They're going to have a very different experience in college than any of us have ever thought about prior. But we really...
I'm sorry, I think about after the 1994 earthquake and the number of trailers that were put up on campus, and there were those students who spent their entire 4-year career at CSUN going to classes in trailers. So here again, you'll have a different experience for whoever's coming to the school this fall, right?
Yes. We've been spending hours and hours and hours trying to plan for how can we safely bring back students and faculty and staff to campus. And the only way that we have thought is the best way to do it is to do a gradual repopulation. We're anticipating another spike, and what we don't want to have happen is for everybody to come back and then we say, oops, nope, go back home again. So we're trying to be able to successfully pivot if we need to. Obviously, if things calm down and restrictions calm down, we can bring more people back to campus. But we're really looking at the science, and we're looking at what the protocols and guidance are from our public health officials, as well as our state and local government officials.
Which reminds me, there are some students, and I've been reading opinions in the media about some students who have considered maybe a gap year or taking some time away from education, pausing it for a time during all of this. What's your thoughts on that?
I personally think that's probably one of the worst ideas in the world, because at this point in time, to take a gap year to do what exactly? To travel? No. To work? The economy is not at its best. Los Angeles, we are approaching 30% unemployment in Los Angeles. So I would suggest to those even thinking about taking a gap year to rethink that option, and as opposed to taking a gap year, spend the time, lean in, continue your education, make progress toward your degree, graduate if you are close, and then return back into the economy, because that's where I think they will be far better served to have an education as opposed to not having an education.
I can say again firsthand, watching my daughter with the grad school program that she's going through, and much of it virtually this semester, that the quality of your education is as good as you want to make it. You know, your participation is as important as anything. So I think that's an important point to be made there. Let's talk about something else that's, I'm sure, keeping you up nights as a result of the COVID pandemic, and that's the financial impact that it has had, not just on CSUN, but the entire CSU system. Clearly, the system relies a great deal on financing from the state. So can you give us a sense of the impact all of this has had on your budget so far?
Well, I'll give you one small example. Between mid-March, when we went virtual, and the end of the semester, the end of May, we lost about $20 million over those couple of months. And that was just from, we elected to refund parking fees. We elected to refund housing and meal plans that students had already paid for, and they weren't getting it. So clearly they deserved the refund, and we provided it. But that meant we took quite a hit in our auxiliaries in terms of housing and dining services and parking. And that was just in those three areas. Then if you pile on to that, what we are planning and trying to achieve is once people start coming back to campus as we repopulate, it's going to be a different place. We're going to have to do extra cleaning and sanitization. We're going to have plexiglass set up in different places and different offices. We have to put signs up all over. We have to put some markers on the ground. Here's 6 feet. Wait your turn. We've all seen that in the stores. If you've been in any grocery store or pharmacy lately, everybody is doing it. And that's what the campus is going to be like. So it's going to be different. And those things are not being given freely away. They all cost. So there's costs associated with taking the safety precautions that we have to do. We have no choice.
About a month ago, the Congress passed the CARES Act as a sort of a financial safety net, not just for education, but for other businesses, both large and small around the country. How much did that help, or how much did that make up some of the gap that you experienced?
It helped a lot. Let me say that. It certainly helped our students a lot. From the standpoint of the overall university budget, it made a dent. It will help make a dent in the deficit that we're looking at, but it's not going to. It's one time, and it doesn't take long to go through that when you are facing a lot of anticipated reductions. Our costs went up and our revenues went down. We're also thinking about what is going to happen in the fall. We were very pleased to learn when we surveyed our current students and we asked them this past spring, are you planning to come back in the fall given this environment? And over 90% said yes. And that was very nice and reassuring. And we've had similar kinds of responses from new entering students, freshmen and transfer students. But until they actually register and are enrolled, we'll have to wait and see what happens with our enrollment. So we're looking at, we just don't know. There are a lot of unknowns out there.
The other unknown probably is the California state budget as well. I mean, that's had a big impact there in Sacramento. Have you gotten any sense of how much you're going to expect the coming fall?
Well, it's the governors may revise, identified a 10% cut for the CSU. So that's pretty significant for us, at least. And right now they're in the process of negotiating the budget with the Senate and Assembly leadership and the governor. And so we just have to wait. We will know on June the 15th when the governor comes out, whether he's going to stick with that 10% cut or whether they're able to negotiate something different, better, we hope. The solution to economic recovery for California has to be in continuing to educate and graduate students into the economy who are prepared, who are creative, problem solvers, innovators. That's who we need to help us in this recovery. And those are our students.
Well, and there's another area where people can help. Having spent many years prior on the CSUN Foundation board, I know that some of your budget also comes from the foundation and its endowment. And I wonder, there are probably people out there wondering what they can do to help with the budget gap or any other needs that may crop up as a result of these extraordinary times. How do you answer that question when people ask you that?
Well, I would say first and foremost, our students have such incredible needs. If you did a 360 look, you would find need at every degree there. And I'm talking about need for scholarship support, for financial aid, obviously, but basic needs, food insecurity, housing insecurity. Many of our students really literally do not have enough to buy food, to buy enough food. Some of our students are homeless or what people call couch surfing. They're moving from friends to friend's house. So really basic needs. So we have an emergency Matador fund that we have been using to help students who are in those dire predicaments. We have a food pantry. I learned just the other day that and it reminded me of you, Bill, and you're going to say, what?
Uh-oh.
No, we were talking about what needs our students have, and in discussing this with our student government leader, we said when students come back to campus that they may have to use their phone to use an app for clearing themselves. You know, there's certain questions they have to answer. They don't have a fever. They haven't been around anybody that's sick, so on and so forth. And the student government president, Rose, said to me, you know, when I was an orientation leader, not very many, but there were a few students who didn't have a smartphone. And I went, oh dear, no, Bill, you're up to speed now. But my point is, if a student is still on a flip phone, they can't even use an app. So not only have we loaned out laptop computers and Wi-Fi hotspots and headphones for students that don't have that capacity, I'm thinking we need to buy some phones and loan out phones, smartphones that students could use so they can use the apps too.
I was just going to say yes. I sent the BlackBerry to the Smithsonian years ago, so that was long ago. We hadn't planned to talk about this, but if people do want to help, I guess they could contact through the CSUN website or the Alumni Association. Any number of ways of contacting the university is how they can begin this process. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about, before we go, how about some positive news? I mean, we all are desperate for that. What if you had to think about it, with all the changes we've been through, the hurdles that the students and faculty and staff members have had to jump over to try and keep the process going, can you think of positive experiences that you've seen or heard about as far as the CSUN community goes as a result of all of this?
You know, there's so many examples of instances where our faculty and students have just stepped up and done things that it almost made me cry. It was so heartwarming. One of our opera classes managed to do their opera performance on Zoom. And you think, wow, how did that work? It was beautiful. It was incredible, amazing, moving. We've got an engineering faculty member that decided he was going to figure out how to make face shields and donate them to local hospitals, which he has. Our nursing students are out working in the hospitals and working at clinics. A lot of one more, the Institute for Sustainability put a project on starting in March where they called Victory Gardens. It was virtual Victory Gardens. So they were teaching students how to grow their own food and provided the seeds to them through the mail. And so they spent the rest of the semester growing salad and vegetables and so forth. It was wonderful. But that's all related to COVID. Believe it or not, there is a world outside of COVID. And earlier in the year, I guess it was back in January, we were notified that the Carnegie Foundation had named CSUN as part of their 2020 Carnegie Community Engaged classification, community engagement. So this is a very competitive process that we had to go through. It's very rigorous. And the fact that they selected us and included us in that classification as a community engaged university. It was really heartwarming and exciting for us. We still get ranked by Money Magazine for our most transformative college listings. We're number 7 nationally because of our graduation rates, because we are able to enhance the social mobility of our students, and because of the students that we serve. So we're very proud of that. And finally, I would give, we were able to secure a wonderful grant program, and we launched the NASA Autonomy Research Center. And this is in partnership for STEAM, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But this is in partnership with the NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and the NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center. It's really exciting what the work that these folks are doing over in engineering. The STEAM stands for Science, Technology, and Engineering, Entrepreneurship, Arts, Humanities, and Mathematics. How's that? For interdisciplinary.
Does that fit on a business card? I don't know.
They just say STEAM, STEAHM.
That's fantastic. Before we go, as you know, I'm retired. You and I compared notes last December when your retirement was announced, because mine was announced about the same time. You were supposed to have been retired by now, but we are so grateful that you agreed to stay on to keep a transition process going here as CSUN meets these challenges. Can you give us an idea what your plans are and how the search is going for the new president of CSUN?
Well, they put this search on hold because of this pandemic, and there were 3 of us that were scheduled to retire at the end of June, the chancellor, myself, and the president of East Bay. And we all decided collectively that we would stay on until December. So I'm here till December 31st officially, and the search for my successor will resume at the end of the summer, August, September. They hope to name a new president in October, by the end of October. That's the plan right now. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend more time with my husband, with my grandkids, and just kind of reflecting on what a ride this has been.
Maybe you and John, Cindy and I can challenge you at a little shuffleboard sometime once we've all finished the retirement process in that regard. I know that we were planning to be at the Distinguished Alumni Awards this last spring. That didn't happen, but maybe another time. I look forward to seeing you in person at some point before you are able to finish your retirement process there. Dr. Harrison, thank you so much for being with us on this program.
Thank you, and give my best to Cindy. Thank you.
I will do that. And thank you all for joining us.